South Project Development, and we have John Gaines and John Tice and Mark Buckaloo, who are going to talk about this project. Now, just to let you know, we shifted a little bit on the schedule since we're going faster. So Dan Montag is going to be going after John and his group to talk about drones before lunch. So, all right, okay, thank you.
All right, which button do I hit?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. So it's, the green is advance, and this is back, and that's the laser pointer.
All right, thanks. Good morning, everybody. Like Pam said, I'm John Gaines with Project Development South. I did include the construction personnel, unlike my predecessor here. And I also even included the bridge designer. So nobody's throwing anybody under the bus here. I would just like to, I've known this project as a Westover connector for pretty much my entire career at DelDot. It was named the POW MIA Parkway later in the process in working with area legislators and veterans groups. The first time Jen stuck her head into my office after this was named, she said, "You're my Palmia guy, right?" I looked at her like a deer in the headlights. I said, "No, I'm not." And luckily Pam was with her, and she stuck her head in and said, "POW MIA." I said, "Yeah, I'm your guy." Let's see, given the military significance of the name that was chosen for this facility, I'd like to ask that we take a moment of silence to think of past and present prisoners of war and also the tens of thousands of missing in action personnel. Thank you for that. As a veteran, this is near and dear to me. Let's see here. All right, so on to the project. The Westover Connector is a approximately 3.2 new roadway alignment. These are before and after construction. This is the southern terminus at US 13, where Charles Polk used to tie into 13. Then you can see it traversing to the north across the Kesselring Farm. There's the new Boy Scouts facility as well as the new Kent County Park facility there. This is as the project traverses the Kesselring Farm on the opposite side of the railroad tracks and then proceeds over the Punch and Run. This is the bridge that spanned the wetland area. This was all part of our Army Corps negotiations. Rather than impacting the wetlands, we chose to span it. And this is the northern terminus in the vicinity of Eden Hill. This was, the first 1,000 feet of this was actually built by the developer, and then we tied into it. All right. In the early stages, we met with the resource agencies multiple times. This was the way we kicked off the project. We loaded them all up on a bus, took them out, and toured the project area. This was a huge success and very well received. We then proceeded in putting together a working group. Let me just note here that we had over 40 members on this working group. Lesson learned, don't have over 40 members. There is zero chance of getting consensus with that many members. The bus trip worked so well with the resource agencies, we loaded the working group up and did the same thing. Again, this was very well received and time well spent. As we went through the process, we brought the working group together 8 different times, and we also had 5 public workshops. As we had all of the working groups were open to the public and very well attended. Strangely, we had free dinner at these events. I'm not sure if that brought them out or not, but the last one we did not have dinner, and there was very few people there. But anyhow, at certain steps in the process, we'd have aerial displays and have the working group members draw up their ideas, and we ended up with 28 different alignments, which were then whittled down to 4 alignments that were taken into the alternatives analysis. these four, as well as the no build, of course. Like I said, we had 5 different public workshops. Later in the process, we started bringing real estate to these meetings. We had 13 total acquisitions of residences, and as those people arrived at the working group or at the workshops, real estate would take those individuals aside and explain the entire process of how we do a total take, what kind of deals they get, and that was huge, because those were the people that were really impacted. They were also very pleased with the results of our impacts to them, I might add. This was the preferred alternative that was moved into final design. This alignment changed multiple times working with the impacted property owners. What was initially the preferred alternative looked slightly different than this. All right, some lessons learned. This was Charles Polk before we started tearing down houses. The houses on the right are the ones that we acquired in total. They were all pretty tickled with the deal they got. The people on the opposite side of the road, however, were not so happy, and we're still dealing with them today. All right, lesson learned on this one. Wow, is that screen shaking? Let's see, on the bottom side of the sheet, we show one curb identifier, and we show multiple guardrail identifiers. So the contractor came out here and installed 8-inch curb. Installed 8-inch curb the whole way through this section. As we all know, you can't have 8-inch curb with a guardrail. So lesson learned there is to make sure you have multiple curb identifiers to call out the correct curb height, because we ended up eating it on this. Another instance with guardrail here. As you can see, the roadway is going through a pretty sharp curve. It's all closed drainage. As we know, pipes don't follow curves. We had plenty of room to set these pipes deep because this was a high embankment area. Unfortunately, we did not. So we ended up having conflicts with the guardrail posts hitting the pipes. To fix this, we're actually coming back in, and every 4th post is going to get an additional post with a set block to get them away from the pipes. Bridge and roadway MOT. This, I'll just come right out and say this got missed. We had a consultant designer on the roadway. We had in-house designers doing the structures. Nobody looked at MOT for this structure, so I'm sure Mark could probably comment on overruns, but that was missed. Utility conflicts, as we all know, these tend to occur. The picture on the left was an existing signal pole and high voltage electric lines. When we came in to install the new signal pole, there were direct conflicts. So we had to come in, and the city of Dover actually put this line underground. But it's something that we should have caught earlier in the process. The instance on the right, this wasn't really our fault at all. Delmarva Power came in to install electric back to the Boy Scouts facility, and instead of setting it far enough off the roadway that we wouldn't impact it later, they put it right on the edge, and so this had to be relocated as well. Let's see, additional last minute signage. If you look at the sign on the top right, it says Clearview Meadow. This is a development over on Route 8. One of our area legislators drove by that sign and called us up. We were about 2 months from opening the roadway, and said, I want one of those signs out on the POW MIA Parkway. The powers that be told Mark and I to make it happen. Kudos to Mark and to Mumford & Miller for getting this monumental sign up. And the sign on the left was a very similar situation last minute, but working with the sign shop and the contractor, we were able to accomplish both of these. They were very well received. I'm gonna turn it over to Tice.
First, I'd like to thank John for inviting me to the bus run over here. Kind of snuck me into the PD South presentation, but as bridge design, we always enjoy working on a project that's being designed by road design, because then we get to do just the bridge, and that's what we're all about. And no MOT. We never do MOT in bridge design, so. What button am I hitting? Just the top. Okay. So just a little background. There were two bridges on this project. Both of them happened to go over railroad tracks. The tracks along New Burton Road are actually a main line for the railroad, and then the other one that goes beside Punch and Run is a kind of a spur for the industrial plants in the area. So at Punch and Run, the issue wasn't really getting over the railroad, it was spanning the wetlands. And it's Army Corps of Engineer has jurisdiction here basically because there's a trickle of water year-round. So I will say, it's the cleanest water I've seen in Kent County so far, so it was well worth it. So you can see a before and after of the of Punch and Run, and through this bridge could have been a lot shorter because if we were just spanning the railroad. And there was a VE after study after the preliminary submission, and it recommended shortening the bridge to 300 feet. So we couldn't do that, so instead we kind of looked at some other alternatives. The environmental agencies also wanted us to reduce our impacts as much as possible in the wetlands. So we came up with just smashing the bridge abutments all the way up to the wetland lines. So now we have MSE walls, and we were able to reduce one substructure because of that. So there was a kind of a major design change after preliminary plans. That's when I entered the project and took it from there. We had some major issues during construction, lessons learned. A railroad needs 23 feet of vertical clearance over their tracks. And I think this probably came about because of the VE process. We tried to reduce the embankment heights. And in doing so, I think the clearance over the railroad was reduced to almost exactly 23 feet. And when we got into construction, there just wasn't enough tolerance there. And so, kind of a big deal when you build a bridge and you can't build it high enough. So that was a lesson learned. Always give yourself enough tolerance, construction tolerance out in the field, whether it's because of survey tolerances or construction tolerances. You should always have, give yourself some wiggle room. So the fix was simple, but it shouldn't have happened. We also had some utility conflicts along New Burton Road by the tracks because there were some high aerials that restricted the crane from driving the piles. So we had to go back to our design and find a solution. It ended up being that we could drive all 3 lines of piles, but one of the pile lines were supposed to be battered. We ended up driving them straight, and we checked the design to make sure that it was acceptable. And the picture of the crane there, I sent the contractor a cross-section, and he threw his crane in there to kind of show. So the contractor was very good to work with through this. They were always double-checking everything before they did it. So this is kind of I'm taking the opportunity to talk about our staffing issues, and Rob talked about it earlier this morning, but this is a team building event we did probably about 6 years ago, around the time that this project was starting. So you can see how many people have left the bridge design section since then. And so the reason I'm talking about this is with both of these projects, the original designers of these bridges either moved up or are no longer with us. And so we always have to work around those issues. So there were a lot of lessons learned in how to deal with that in this project. One of the main things for me was if a problem comes up in construction and the question comes to me and I wasn't the designer, I have no idea what's going on. I would rather have made a mistake myself and know how to fix it. It's easier to come up with a solution. Also, during this time we were writing the bridge design manual, our new bridge design manual, and a lot of the details from Westover were taken for that manual, looked at, revised based on stuff we learned. And so going forward, we have a lot more standardization in our processes and our details that, will help this issue. So, Mark?
So I'm a little shocked. This construction's turning. We're not behind schedule already. I started with the groundbreaking. This is the Secretary's first groundbreaking experience. You see your pink shovel still brand new in this photo. This job featured a wetland access road. This is something I've never gone through before. I was a little concerned. I thought this could have ended very badly. We worked with Carol Sullivan and Ken Dunn to come up with a plan that would work. The theory is construct a wetland access road through the wetlands, and then the little fingers coming off to the left here of this plan are where the bridge piers go. There's a proposed temporary wooden stream crossing for Pigeon Run. The wetland access road be constructed out of geotextile laid on the existing ground with R4 over top, choked in with number 3 stone. Good theory. I was a little concerned that it wouldn't really pan out this well. By putting this road in this way, we wouldn't have any ground disturbance. The equipment can move in and out without disturbing any of the ground. Here's a photo of Westover alignment coming into the wetland itself before we started. And this is a ground shot of what it looked like. You see staining water. It was very soft material. We had to hike through there before we started to start looking at the alignment of the wetland access road itself. Once we got started, for clearing and grubbing, the contractor would lay out wooden planks for the equipment to run on, walk out, remove trees, haul the trees back out. Again, by running on the platforms, you're not disturbing the ground. Once you're done clearing and grubbing, they were able to go in and start installing silt fence. Now the silt fence, we didn't install it as your normal trench it in. They would leave the flaps out and then lay compost logs on top. Again, not disturbing the ground. Once they had all the silt fence in, contractor could go to work. This is a shot of what it looked like during construction with the wetland access road on the left side of your screen with the little fingers coming off to where all the piers were. This actually worked very well. We're very pleased with how this went down. A few incidents with some rainstorms maybe toppled over some of the silt fence, but for the most part, this was a huge success for us. By the way, one thing I missed on the previous slide, the contractor before he started had to as-built the existing wetlands before we started, because when he's done, he had to go in and put all the material back and regrade everything to within a 1/10. Now this grid, it was gridded out like a 10-foot by 10-foot grid. So they were able to put everything back within a 1/10. The Army Corps was very pleased. This is a photo of what it looked like now. This actually went fantastic. Army Corps gave their approval. They were very pleased with the success of this product. Next thing I'm gonna talk about is precast beam delivery. Normally, this isn't a big deal. It's really a non-event. For some whatever reason, this project, it was an event. So the precast beams here are about 130, some of the longest ones are about 130 feet long. And the beams are cast in Pennsylvania. We have to, police escort come out of Pennsylvania, comes down to Delaware, picks up police escort in Delaware, supposed to bring all the way down the project. This project, these beams had to cross the Roth Bridge. The Army Corps of Engineers said, if that beam comes across our bridge, you have to close it completely. And only that beam can be on the bridge, no traveling public. I'm not sure who designed that one, Craig, but you might want to look at that one, maybe beef it up a little bit. So fortunately, maintenance was able to do some rolling roadblocks to help getting the beam across. For every single beam that had to come across, you had to do a rolling roadblock. One of the beams took a wrong exit coming in Pennsylvania. Fortunately, the vehicle was able to stop prior to going under the beam, or this would have ended very badly. Pennsylvania drivers, this isn't Delaware. The last piece I want to talk about that was a huge success for us was the reconstruction of West North Street. The original design intent for this project was to just patch West North Street and do some crack sealing. When our inspectors went out, did a estimate on all the patches that would have to be done, they looked around $1 million worth of patching. We're also going to do like an ultra-thin overlay, which would have cost $300,000. In all, to just put a Band-Aid on West North Street, it would have cost us about $1.3 million. So we started thinking about what if we just reconstructed the entire thing while we're doing Westover. Ryan O'Donoghue with FHWA said, sounds like a great idea, do an estimate, let me know what you come up with. So because there's Kraft, Procter & Gamble, and NRG along West North Street, so why don't we just precast panels, this new innovation, Secretary likes innovation, let's just precast panel the whole thing. So preliminary estimates came back for precast panels, $13 million. Ryan said, there's no way I'm giving you $13 million. He said, get it under 6, then we could talk. I said, okay. So worked with AECom, who's the designer on this, worked with John Gaines to come up with some sort of phasing plan to maybe do some of this West North Street in sections. Close West North Street in sections, work around the businesses, figure out what would work for them. Really, there was no good closure time for them because Procter & Gamble and Kraft, they run tractor trailers 24/7. You can't close it at night. You need cure time for the concrete. By staging closures on West North Street in sections, we can minimize the impacts to the businesses. We're very transparent with what we needed to have done, and they worked with us. And fortunately, we were able to do a lot of cast in place out on West North Street to minimize the location where we're going to run precast. To give you an idea of cost, cast in place for removal and replacement, MOT cost and everything was $160 a square yard. To do precast panels, talking $399 a square yard. Big price difference. So we're able to shrink to just do precast panels in the intersection of West North Street and Salisbury Road. Here's a shop drawing of the precast panels that are in the intersection. Every one of these panels has a number identifier, and every one of these panels is cast differently. Most of them are not the same. So when a panel comes out to the job and to be installed, it'll have a stamp on the side of the panel, so you know what panel you're dealing with and where it needs to go in relation to the shop drawings. Every one of those panels was looked at prior to delivery to make sure it was all going to have a good fit. Fortunately, with West North Street, we did cores early on to determine the subgrade, and we had a very good select bar base. It wasn't wet. It was good condition. We didn't have to do any subgrade mitigation. Once the contractor, in order to do the precast panels, the contractor would come out a week prior, saw cut the area of the precast panels longitudinally and then transversely. So that way, when they come in to actually put in the panels, you just demo your section of concrete, grade your subgrade, and they used stone dust material as a sand bed. Once you get the stone dust on grade, several iterations. That's probably what took the longest, was placing the stone dust and getting the stone dust on grade. They would place stone dust, fine grade it, compact it. Place stone dust, fine grade, compact it. So you had a nice level surface for the precast panel to rest on. This is a photo of the stone dust on grade and lifting the panel into place. The panel, we left about a ½ inch on either side of the panel for the existing concrete, and the panel that may have been placed previously for the panel to sit right in. We had established grades on every corner of the panels so we know where we were. These panels had to go in at grade, otherwise, as you can understand, if you start being off on one panel, it's gonna be worse by the time you get 100 feet away. Your problem's gonna compound. Fortunately, inspection-wise, design-wise, the contractor bought in. This went very smoothly. I thought this was a huge success for us. After your panels are set, there's holes, grout holes, that the contractor will pump grout in to lock in the panels around the dowel bars themselves, and they would also pump grout in as a setting bed for underneath of the panels. Fort Miller provided the precast panels for us, and they were a huge benefit to the success of West North Street. Got a little plug in for Royal Farms because they didn't complain one time the entire time we were out this intersection. This is the final product. I thought this, as you can see in the intersection, that's where the panels, precast panels are, and on the right side of the photo itself is the cast in place concrete. I thought this went fantastic. I thought it looks excellent, and it rides phenomenal. So kudos to Mumford & Miller for providing the crews to do this project. Thank you to FHWA for providing the funding. Finance, Laney Thornton helped us secure the funding. I mean, from concept through securing the funding, through design, reconstruction. It took us a 1.5 years, and that's moving. And so I thank you to everyone involved with this, design, public relations, and my inspection staff, really. Inspection staff, I would not have even thought about attempting this if I didn't have the staff out there that we had. So thank you. We're not done.
We still got time here. Got 3 minutes. So we also had an opening ceremony and a ribbon cutting and a groundbreaking. I believe at the groundbreaking it was about 15 degrees and the wind was blowing about 40 knots. At the ribbon cutting it was probably close to 100 degrees, all out there on hot mix. It was very well attended. The governor was there to speak, and this gentleman on the right, he's Brigadier General John Reynolds. He was a POW for 7 years in Vietnam, so it was an honor to have him out there to give a speech, and there was a huge attendance of veterans. There's a large group of Vietnam veterans from up around Smyrna, and overall it was very, very well attended. There were a lot of speakers. Here's the ribbon cutting, and after the ribbon cutting, the veterans groups were the first ones to officially drive the facility, though Mark's guys have been tearing it up for years. This is the unveiling of the monument sign, which again was very well received. It's out there. I'm sure you'll see it if you ride the facility. This is a graph of traffic data since we opened the facility. The first bump all the way to the left is about 2,500 cars on that day. The last spot is, I think it was January 24th when they pulled the data. It was over 8,600 vehicles. So in a matter of a couple months, it's gone from 2,000 to over 8,000. And this is a drone flight, if it's going to work. Is there any way to select that? Ah, there we go. Oh, well, I guess it's not going to work. I put it in the folder. I know. Oh, well, I guess that's it then. Do we have any questions? Yeah, there we go. I'll just leave that plain.
Hey, John, I got a question for you. You said the folks in Rodney Village are still unhappy. What are they unhappy about?
They were unhappy about, they know what the deals were that the people across the street got, and they're not gonna ever go sell their house for the same type of deal.
John, deal, different word I would use. Especially when
Settlement,
that basically,
settlement.
hey, you know, next day on Tuesday.
They use that in New Jersey, but not in Delaware.
Well, the landscape buffer between Rodney Village and Westover Connector, POWMIA Park, it looks awesome. I think
Yeah,
they
that all came out
really
really
improved improved that buffer strip there between Rodney Village and the highway. Overall, I think it really came out great.
Good?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.